Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world, wherever you're zooming in from. Hi, my name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. And today we're talking about one of those topics that's ubiquitous amongst the Globies. And perhaps this is one of those things that interests us and keeps us engaged with global business. And that is, it's not just selling to people that we know and understand. It's often selling and being involved with businesses and cultures and all sorts of differences from how we were personally raised. And I know certainly as a global business person for now 33 years, going on 34 years in a couple months, I know one of the things that has always interested me from day one is the fact that people are different around the world. And if you can understand that, you can understand yourself then a little bit better. And then I believe, and I think it's been demonstrated like a million times over, that you can be more successful with your international business. And so that's what we're talking about today. We've got experts assembled thanks to our Global Chamber Dhaka and Global Chamber Barisal chapters. I'd like to now introduce the lead person, our executive director for those chapters, Maimun Mustafa, who will take us forward. Maimun, thank you. Good evening in Bangladesh. Good morning in the US. And again, hello to everybody around the world. Thanks for leading us today.
Thanks, Doug. It's always a pleasure. Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Shalom. And the host of other greetings that we can give you, because we all come from such diverse cultures. And that's what we want to celebrate here today and understand even more, so that we can grow globally. This drug has already told you who we have an excellent panel of speakers today who come from all different spectrums, specializations, from IT to tech to trade, and to, of course, understanding culture itself. So we're going to talk about it, and I won't do too much of the talk today, and I'll leave it up to the speakers. So let me introduce our first panelist, Mr. Raihan Hadi. Now, Raihan has a rich history of 20 years of experience of working in training and practice in RMG, that's ready-made garments, real estate, research, and publications. He's worked for the Bangladesh and Korean governments as well in the commercial sector. He currently resides in Malaysia, but he identifies himself as a global entrepreneur. Raihan, please introduce yourselves in the realm of culture and how we can benefit most from it.
All right, thanks, Maimun. Hello, everyone from around the world. I am Raihan, Global Advisor from Chittagong Chapter, currently living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Today, I'm gonna do a very basic presentation on understanding culture in order to excel in international business. If Cesar can kindly help me do the slides, then we'd straight get to the presentation, please. Okay, so next slide, please. Now, I start with the word salad bowl because the world is full of mixtures right now. Every country has quite a healthy mix of people, I would say, from all around the world, more or less. And being a salad bowl, all the ingredients in a salad bowl, basically, although they're separate and come with their own flavors, with their own qualities, but they mix together somehow in the end. And that's what it applies. That's what the theory applies to a salad bowl nation. And right now, as I said, the world is kind of like in that situation. And in that aspect, I would like to begin with the first point, which is every nation has its unique culture and activities therein, which means that even though, even though if you're, for example, let's say if you're living in the US is not a culture of its own. Although there are cultures in inside the US that are followed by all Americans in general, but there are Latinos, there are Blacks, there are whites, there are Asians. Every culture has its own different activities that they would like to follow, and this brings on a unique and fun sense of unity and respect for all. And by understanding each individual's culture, we can learn new ways and expand our knowledge about them. And treating culture with respect is very much vital for companies who aim to expand internationally in this day and age. Next slide, please. So there is an obvious beauty in cultural diversity. Knowing the diverse aspects of different cultures allows international businesses to think more creatively, to be accepted by the various niches they target in a multicultural marketplace. And this is why even supermarkets in places with mixed cultures have ethnic food sections. It just shows more acceptance, enhances mutual respect for one another, and ensures not just really steadier but higher income for the business operating in that zone. Next slide, please. So here I'm going to come up with a very recent example that I learned about, which is the martial arts superstar Bruce Lee, who's obviously no more. But he created this mixed martial art format called Jeet Kune Do, based on philosophies and techniques from various nations and cultures around the world, which includes Thailand, Philippines, USA, Japan, and many other countries from where like martial artists came over to the US, and he sort of built a collaboration with a lot of them to learn from their unique capabilities in martial arts, and sort of like rebuilding a new format, which is right now acceptable by a lot of people around the world. Basically, most of the people who are doing mixed martial arts right now follow Jeet Kune Do, which is why this successful venture of Bruce Lee created the scope for a multi-billion-dollar business for MMA we now know as UFC, whose net worth this year of 2020 alone is $7 billion US. And by doing so, he actually spread the influence of Chinese Kung Fu worldwide and created a new genre for Hollywood films that we all love. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of working with Korean people, which by far in my lifetime is the best working experience that I've had. Now, like Koreans, many other Southeast Asian countries or South Asian countries also follow a contactless greeting style. They do us like bowing, or in many places like Pakistan or Bangladesh, we do a Assalamu alaikum, and we just touch our forehead like doing a salute. And for Korea specifically, and many other Southeast Asian countries, presenting business cards and accepting them with sincerity and never writing on them is considered like really, really a good practice. Obviously, if meetings are going to be long, they give high importance of keeping food and drinks aside so that people don't just keep talking with a dry voice. And usually for meetings, I've always seen that going to a meeting early, not just 10 minutes early, but for sometimes even half an hour early, shows a lot of sincerity, eagerness, and respect for the person you're going to meet. And there's a practice of doing things right at once with Koreans and other Southeast Asian countries as well. Next slide, please. So some more important things to remember when doing business with Korean people or other countries in Southeast Asia like Japan and China is to exchange small gifts during the first meeting. It can be anything that's related to your culture or something significant that represents your company, but it's always good to exchange something. You have to be prepared to work longer hours, but it's a personal promise from myself, because I've seen it a lot for for the years that I've worked with Koreans that they will definitely make it fun and worthwhile. And as I said again, regarding the small gifts, again, regarding cultural exchanges, you should make them based on attires. For example, giving clothing from your culture to them, and they will do the same. They will reciprocate. And they like to talk a lot about movies. They like to watch movies, hold film festivals a lot, and they really love good instrumental music. And I think this applies to most countries in the world, but especially with Koreans, I've seen that keeping a warm and friendly tone to conversations and messages always sweetens the deal. It makes work easier for everyone. And obviously, the last one, I think it's important for all of us to know that never to break our promises that we make. If we cannot keep a promise, then we shouldn't make that promise. That's the basic practice that Koreans usually have. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation. I'm happy to connect with anyone who wants to connect with me. My email address is given right here, along with my WhatsApp number. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. I think we learned a lot about how things go down in the Southeast, especially in the parts of Korea. And we'd love to have, those business meetings with the Koreans if they really make it work. We'll go on to our next speaker. And this is another individual who is on the board of Global Chamber Dhaka, but he is originally from Washington. And he works with this very special part of new genre industry, that's geospatial analysis, Earth observation. So he's going to be looking down at us from above, from a few years down the line. That's Coleman Lutz. And when we leave planet Earth, I think we'd want to take some cultural aspects that we've all inherited through the ages. And Cole has spent a lot of time in the Southeast, integrating himself with the local communities. We'd love to know more about that and about his wonderful exports. So, the floor is all yours.
Thanks so much, Mamoon, and for everyone for joining today. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Alrighty, so my name is Coleman Lutz. I also go by Cole for short. And like Mamoon said, I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area pretty much all my life until college. And I kind of had this experience studying abroad in Bilbao, Spain, that really sparked my interest for international travel and inspired me to embark on a 6-month journey through Southeast Asia, visiting over 10 countries. And in the process, we became incredibly inspired to start the Journey Foundation, which is how I got involved with Mamoon. And so the Journey Foundation is a nonprofit that supports adventure philanthropy. And I'm sharing these unique experiences that I've had over the past few years to help provide you with this perspective of where we're coming from. And then around 4 to 6 months later, we started a space research organization and podcast called Frontier Space. And let me see, around 18 to 24 months later, kind of identified this life purpose and passion to help make life planetary and started a Mars University. Okay, so part of what I deeply admire about the global space community is that our collaboration is truly multidisciplinary and international across boundaries, and because it really takes a team to accomplish what you want beyond Earth's biosphere. and so yeah, here's a slide on fostering international communication. It all kind of starts with this idea that over time leads to innovation and mutual benefits for partners and people that are involved in a project with a greater international community. And then as a entrepreneur, I've come to experience and learn that emotion is generally positive in the workplace. And I believe it's really important that we include emotion in our communication because it helps resemble what we care about. And I read this novel by Arthur C. Clarke, this famous space author, around 6 months ago, and it was a sci-fi novel about how the human race, there was this higher being and presence that united everyone of the human race and formed a entirely new species. Is kind of far out, but it gets back to the idea that when people come together toward a common goal, and we're kind of embodying one mindset, and this topic of swarm intelligence is embodied in throughout nature, through bees, ants, flocks of birds, and it kind of sparks this idea of a super organism that is created, and so I think it's yeah, I don't know. And here's a photo of me riding through Laos with some wonderful people and children. I ride along the way. And here's a slide on how culture impacts the perception of time. There's so many contributing factors that really influence our perception of time, from physical and mental health, past and present relationships, either social or business. The significance of the opportunity. How passionate are each people contributing to the project, and then momentum is another really important factor, and along with schedules, cultural norms, and a lot of other things that is on the slide. And so all these factors contribute to how we perceive time. And so the perspective that I've accepted is that it's okay to be 5 minutes late, but 10 minutes late is unacceptable. And I think, yeah, it's easier to be on time in virtual meetings than in person, because I feel like there's so many factors with the in-person meetings. And then the perception of time from there goes to these response mechanisms and how everyone and each person individually reacts to someone being late, or the perception of time, and then how we react to those actions and behaviors. And just a slide on influencing and negotiation. It really starts with research and knowledge, and everyone's so busy these days, and so it's really important that we keep our communication short and simple. And I think if we have highly skilled people with diversity, I think and everyone's striving toward a common goal, I think anything is possible in terms of what we can accomplish as a species. That's it. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
That's some good stuff. Higher thoughts, looking to the higher frontier in the years to come. Um, we actually had another amazing speaker lined up for today. That was Labiba Zaman, and she came from a legal background, and she would have added in some amazing inputs, but unfortunately she's fallen ill at the last moment, and we wish her well. And unfortunately, even though she can't join us, we'll have to move on to our next speaker. And that today is Farzana Afrin Disha. Disha is not only a board member for Global Chamber Dhaka, she's also a coordinator for us who gets all the hard work done. She may have been an electrical and electronic engineer academically, but she is the marketing lead of a local IT company, Operating Station 23. She's doing a lot of amazing things in the IT industry in Bangladesh, leading the AWS community, as well as she's the country director of Women in Big Data in Bangladesh, among many other things. Now, Isha has worked while being in South Asia as female leader with the East as well as the West. So I think we can learn a lot about ways for going forward and how to tackle these different cultural aspects and come to a common ground. Isha.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry for that. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Maimun, for the sweet introduction. And assalamu alaikum and hello, everyone. This is Tisha from Bangladesh. I'm currently working as a head of marketing for Brain Station 23, apart from all the other work I'm doing currently. Those are voluntary or non-profit. But the work, actually, my experience, which brought me here today, is basically talking about how international business works and how culture is very important. So for that, I would say that business is all about people. You actually have to deal with the people when you are doing business, like, globally. So whenever we are thinking about doing global business, there are some few things we have to keep in mind. If we are having cross-culture colleagues or offices, then, you get to understand it in a better manner. But all the companies who want to see or grow internationally, they have to master the skills of understanding the culture of the country they are doing business or trade with. So, which is why culture is always a very important factor for businesses. And if I talk about, what is my perception, what would be my definition of culture? So I always see culture is a collective experience of the society. It's not about one single person, it's about the collectiveness of it. So the people who are actually residing in a country like Germany. So I can relate to Germans nowadays because I have colleagues from Germany. So I see how Germans are very serious, and people used to talk about it, that Germans are very serious people. They are highly perfectionist, and these are actually true words. Even when I cut jokes with my German colleagues, I can see that they're very serious about the jokes. So it's nothing so everything is very serious with the Germans, and they are very serious about the works they do. Like the project management planning has to be perfect before they want to get start with a project. So the planning, for planning, they requires a lot of time, because they need a lot of documentation prior to get to start a work to be done. So, and then whenever I connect with my Dutch colleague, so I see that they are a bit flexible about that. So for Germans, it's very inevitable that everything has to be properly planned before you jump for a business to grow, or you try out something. Well, for US, I have experienced that they're the hustlers and bustlers. So always you have to try, you have to fail, and then you succeed. So for US, it's absolutely okay if you fail, but you have to try first. But for Germans, I would say they're a bit skeptical about trying out a thing out of the blue. So they would be very calculative about doing or trying a new thing. So yeah, that is what culture actually differentiate from one to another, and that is the beauty of it. No culture is good or bad. It's always about the perception, what background they're from, how they are how they have been brought. So few components of international businesses, if I talk about those, you have to always look after the international business law. Whenever you are thinking like, from Bangladesh, you want to outsource in Germany or in Japan, if your international business law actually help you out in those area to do those offshore businesses, or the trade agreements, how should it look like, the property rights or partner finding, what should you think about a partner who can resonate your company culture. So as of my company, the company I represent, BrainStation 23. So whenever I look at the company has been adopting all the cultural differences over time. So the company has been in the market for last 15 to 16 years. The CEO is extremely understanding, has a clear understanding of the fact that we have to understand the culture, we have to honor the differences. Otherwise, we won't be able to grow globally. So what are the key factors we look after whenever we are doing those offshore businesses? Number one, the time difference. The time difference is a major issue. So sometimes what happens that you have to look after the time differences, accordingly have to serve your customer or your partner or the client, if whatever you want to address them with. So the time differences is a factor. The punctuality cases, suppose for our Japanese clients, I see that every meeting they have to come, they come at least 5 minutes earlier, because that is the culture they have. So different culture actually represents different the norms and different values. So accordingly, you have to sort of sort of adapt yourself so that you can get the right fit for your business partnership. So if any IT companies, for an example from Bangladesh, is looking forward to serve the multinationals globally, so what do they need? They absolutely need some industry standardization certificate. So suppose you need ISO certificate, so that the companies who want to invest in you have a clear vision that you are serving international quality. So the quality is there. Your organization, the company you're representing, has the experience or has the capability at least to deliver the quality product. And then you always need to negotiate with the prices. Sometimes for some companies, price is not the issue. It's absolutely depending on the culture. So sometimes quality is the main factor rather than the price. And sometimes you have to balance it out. So always you have to look up on those items so that you can serve your partner better. You can grow your business together whenever it's coming to the cross-cultural business. Some crucial component for success, I would say that so international ACO. It's sort of a marketing term when it comes to ACO, but the optimization is different for different companies. Suppose the company who are serving worldwide, they have different promotional, or I would say brand image for different continents. Suppose the company who are doing businesses in Malaysia or Europe or US, you have different websites for presenting different region. So the international issue is important to reach out the local first, and then you reach out to the global community, right? And then the brand awareness via social media, what we always represent to sort of deliver a clear image about your brand. So it is important that the brand awareness sort of reflects with your culture, with your company culture, because otherwise, if you're not not being able to deliver a proper image, people might misunderstood you. Suppose you want to deliver software customarily for enterprises only, and the small businesses are coming to get your services, they might not be able to afford you. So a clear communication about your brand is very important there. So culturally, it's very important that every culture, I would say, who are developed countries, who are developing countries, they represent their culture differently through their brand promotions. So it is always important that we sort of understand the culture differences and the target area which we want to penetrate as a business people. We should always understand their culture as well, and what are their expectations from us so that we can deliver the proper message to them. And with that, I would say that, yeah, that is a brief, thing I could say in a short amount of time about cultures, company cultures and all. So I always say that culture actually accelerate the business success as well. Suppose your culture is not so much friendly with startups, so that the startup is not booming in your country. Sometimes it can happen. And the cultural intelligence would actually give you a way forward for your business success. So wrapping it up, I would say business is all about making connections, and we should understand the culture and get to connect with people differently as they're expecting. So thank you so much. That was all from me for today's Globinar. Thank you. Over to you, Maimun.
Thank you so much, Tisha. Given these trying times when we can't travel, I think you took us on a short journey around the whole world, from Europe to Southeast Asia. Thank you very, very
My
much.
pleasure. Thank you.
So now we're going to go into the creme de la creme of today's event. I think with someone who is actually going to let us delve into the art of professional connection. This is a book that she actually has authored herself. Her name is Gloria Peterson. Gloria has 30 years of experience in providing training, seminars, and coachings in professional image, cultural etiquette, and international protocol. So I don't think it gets better than this right now. So she not only trains corporate trainers, university professors, as well as she works with career coaches to enhance images and the soft skills. So I think this is where we mold everything together. So Gloria, don't let me do the talking. I mean, take it away.
Thank you very much, and hello to everyone around the world. I do not have slides, but I have lots of notes. So what I decided to do is to try to tie everything together from what I already heard. And certainly I'm going to take everyone back to the basic foundation of communicating. And certainly Tisha is connecting. Communication is about connecting. So let me take you there. But first of all, let me kind of tie everybody into this. As I heard Raihan, am I saying your name correctly? Okay,
Yes.
That's a point to always ask. So there's rule number one. There's a lot of names out there that are very, very confusing or difficult or a mystery. And you look at the name, you look at the way it's arranged, you look at the way the letters are, and you think, how do I even start? So the start is take the risk. Take the risk and take it in saying somebody's name incorrectly. Ask them if you said it correctly. And if you didn't, listen very carefully and try to figure out how to say it correctly. Our phonics within each of us is very, very different. So some sounds are just not going to come out as perfectly as they do in your own culture. And I think we all need to respect that. So we'll start with that right there. But getting back to your salad bowl, I have a different word that you can also use, and it's used in the dining world, and it's called fusion dining. So I think what we have is a fusion culture. And I'm going to take you back a little bit, then I'll move on to Coleman. In the 1960s, you heard I had 30 years in this, so I'm going to be taking you back a bit. There's an author by the name of Edward T. Hall. And he wrote a book, I think it was called The Fifth Dimension, something like that. But what he did is he took communication down into two categories, but today there's three. But the two categories that he had was the ones that are relationship driven, those cultures, and certainly Asia, East Asia, Latin America, Africa are very relationship driven cultures. They build the rapport. The building the rapport is more important than time. Listening is more important than talking. So I think you kind of get the gist of that. The other culture he gave a name was called monochronic. And this would be the United States, Canada, the Scandinavian countries, Britain, Germany, etc. And Tisha, you did mention, I think you mentioned Germany in there. And these cultures like ours, it's the bottom line of doing business. We want our lawyers, we want everything validated. Forget the relationship. Let's just get down to business, get it done and make the deal. And that's kind of like an attitude there. So it's more about talking than listening. And a classic of that, which I think, Doug, you can probably speak to this, that in Japan, when there's silence, and you can chime in if you'd like, when there's silence, we Americans get nervous, correct? And we start talking and we give away too much information. But the reality is when there's silence, they're processing, correct, Doug? You can chime in.
They're processing and they're just comfortable with quiet. You know, it's just
Yeah.
okay for that, where Americans tend to want to keep the space filled with words.
Yeah, we can't handle the silence. It makes us nervous. And then we start rambling. And then we say too much. So what I'm saying, there's a lot of discipline here. Now, he had it in those two categories, but now we've learned to be more blended in the way we do our business. And sometimes we're a little of this and a little of that. And now we have the fusion communication. And that's where we have to be very, very careful as we communicate. And certainly, Coleman, you talked about the culture relating to the perception of time. And his system was a monochronic time, which is you pay more attention to one thing at a time. They value silence, etc. The polychronic time, being involved with more things and lots of things going on at the same time. And then, of course, the fusion, or what I call blended. So even the way we do business in some cultures, it's okay to be late, like in Latin America. They will be very late, for example. But in our culture, which is more the other, it's about be on time. And I think, Tisha, you addressed that also. So that's one. And the other one was, let's see, Coleman, you talked about emotion. And I think that's where that's where we have arrived. Emotion in the relationship, or let me rephrase that. I talked about relationship-driven cultures, and Edward T. Hall called it high context, high value on the relationship. The other one he called task-driven, which was the low context type of culture, where it's all about the legal aspects and things like that. So we want to be very careful there how we do business. But bottom line is know and respect the cultural etiquettes and the protocols around the world. They do vary. Etiquette changes with the times and society, and certainly has there. And that's where a lot of people get really messed up when they deal with it, with, for example, America. There are two kinds of etiquettes here. There's a traditional etiquette and there's a modern. For the most part, most of the world is on the traditional page. And a lot of times when I say traditional, I also called it gender-based. In the 1960s, the United States went through a lot of change. Movements took place, and it created a different kind of business environment for women. And that environment became non-gendered. So a lot of times women in this country expect other countries to have adapted to that, but they haven't. They're still on the traditional page. For example, the man opens the door for the woman. Okay, that's traditional etiquette. In our business world here, it's more about showing deference to rank than it is about the woman. So, you know, as a woman, if I'm entertaining a client, I would offer to open the door for him. Here it gets to be real back and forth. He might be uncomfortable with that because he was raised on this traditional value, and he won't be able to go through the door. And I would have to say, please, after you, I'm showing respect. And if he can't, then you just have to juggle it and figure out where people are coming from and what makes them uncomfortable. The goal ultimately is to turn all these cultural differences that we're encountering into a competitive advantage and to have a win-win situation. And the best way to do that is to just really understand the cultural etiquette, knowing if somebody's on a more modern page, on the more traditional page, or just something that's unique to their culture. But I think if I were to kind of give this one umbrella, if you could, is just realize that cultural etiquette does vary from culture to culture. It changes with the times and society. And the rules of etiquette determine the best behavior to match a situation. For example, I was talking a little bit too quickly for a while. I should correct that. And I should talk in sound bites. Because when you're dealing with people, this is an etiquette, cultural etiquette, around the world. They are trying to translate, English, whatever their language is in their head, as they try to understand you. So it's hard when you talk rapidly, and that's how you were raised. East Indian language, you have a rhythm to the way you talk. When you listen to East Indian language, there's a rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm gets very, very difficult to comprehend. And you talk fast sometimes, and I get lost. Some of us get lost. So slow it down. I think the best example I give you, if you want to understand what talking in sound bites is like, so that people around the world who have language challenges, where English is not their first language, is to listen seriously to President Obama. I've never heard a president speak in sound bites as beautifully as he does, but he talks in phrases. He makes sure there's pauses. I was doing a seminar for the Northeastern Illinois University once, and I had students from all over the world, a lot of East Indian students in there. And when I said that, you couldn't hear a pin drop, because they realized what I was saying. So that's the first step in good communication, is to speak in such a way that you are understood, challenged, especially to me, who talks fast, as I already did. And then I have to tell myself, whoa, slow down. Be patient with people with accents. I'm always amazed when somebody tells me I have an accent, because I don't think I do. So, and I think that's what we all think. We don't think we have an accent, but sometimes we Americans or other people in other cultures, when they're listening to somebody with this accent, which challenges the conversation, it does challenge it, we get impatient. And you know what we try to do? We try to talk for them. We interrupt them. We say, come on, let's move along, let's get this conversation moving. And it's rude. Not intentionally being rude, but just not being respectful of what's going on at that particular moment. And the other thing in etiquette is just when you are in a conversation, whether it's Zoom like this or in person, pay attention to whom is not speaking. Pay attention to the quiet one, and then direct. And it's, for example, in this particular scenario here, if we were all talking and not muted, I might say, Coleman, what did you think about that idea? Or do you have an opinion? I might direct over to you to get you to come into the conversation, because you might be wanting to come into it, but your little shy side says, well, I don't know if I really want to say that, or I don't know how I don't want to be rude and interrupt, or I don't know how to get in. So that's another cultural etiquette, is to be very, very aware. That's not just culture, that's etiquette, period. Just be aware who's not involved, and get everybody involved. I don't know how much time I have left. I could keep going on and on. I feel like I'm doing a seminar. But I think what I want to close, before I close, because I'm going to come back to you, Doug. International protocol, unlike etiquette, doesn't change as much. It's more about defining procedure to remove distractions, to have an orderly way of doing business. It's determining who to introduce to whom, respecting the rules, respecting titles, and realizing that some people's, and even looking at the name arrangement. My name, my last name is the last part of my name. In some culture, the last name that you would direct with an honorific is in the middle. In other cultures, it's at the beginning. So you have to really understand the arrangement of a name from the cultures. In a dining situation, just protocols, knowing as if you are the host, who gets served first. Even in dining, in formal dining, seating arrangement is a protocol. And the seating arrangement is honoring people of rank. Honoring the guest of honor is in that seating arrangement. If you put the guest of honor in the wrong spot, you have insulted that guest of honor. So there's a protocol to all that. That's why it's good to know that. And certainly the exchange of business cards, which was mentioned already. I think, who mentioned? I think, Raihan, didn't you mention business cards? Just the way the business card is presented. You said not to write on them.
Yes.
Well, my teaching is don't write on the card in front of them. But when you have a private moment and you're away from them and there's something about them you need to write down to remember the interaction, a word, a phrase that will help you trigger that conversation, do it off someplace else where they can't see, write it on the card so that you're not defacing in front of them. And certainly there's a protocol to offering the card in that way too. You know, and in Asia, it's, you know, both hands. And ours, it's not a deck of cards that you just pass out, which Americans tend to do. But Doug, I'm coming back to you as my wrap up here. And how I met Doug, it was that I moved from Chicago to Phoenix, and I joined the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce, and I went to my first luncheon. And I was sitting at this round table. This is an example for all of you, and this is what I'll close with. I was sitting at this round table of people I absolutely did not know because I was a newbie to this area. I knew the Chicago area. I had built my business in that area, huge success in that market. I moved here for family reasons, but then I had to start all over by joining chambers, getting to know everybody, trying to figure out the landscape. Doug's at this table and he's kind of sitting this, I can remember where you sat, Doug, it's kind of like right there. I'm sitting there and some people were waiting for the speaker to start and we're all kind of staring off into space. Some people are talking, some people are off here. And I'm sitting there like, I don't know anybody here. So I did a motion. I said, excuse me. And I pointed to the ceiling. Well, I could see the looks on their faces like, well, who are you? You know? And I said, I just want to say, I don't know anyone at this table. And I'm not sure you all know each other either. So if I can start on my right, never start with you. Never start with you. Start with the person on your right and say, would you introduce yourself and maybe say something to help other people connect with you? And they started going around. And it was really cool because I remember a woman on my right was across from a woman over here. The woman on the right said something that was very connecting to the woman over here. And I think they got together afterwards. But that would not have happened had I not taken that initiative. And then when it got around to me where I could introduce myself, the speaker was getting ready to start. So I got cut short. So the moral to that is allow yourself to be the one to get cut short because it raises more curiosity about you. So we were dismissing and I'm walking away thinking, okay, I didn't really get to say much, but I didn't know who they were. And there's this voice behind me. Of course, when Doug is sitting, you don't realize how tall he is. I'm only 5'2". So you got the picture. He's what, 6 foot? How tall are you, Doug? About 6'1", 6 foot, something like that. Anyway, I hear this voice behind me say, Miss Peterson. And I turned around, I looked, he goes, I remember, Doug, you said, who are you? So I finally got to say who I was to Doug, and our friendship started from there. And it's continued throughout these years. And when he created Global Chamber in 2013, I was on board without even a second thought. So thank you for that, Doug. And that's why I'm here, sitting here today, is because of that table conversation is why I'm right here. And with that, I'll turn it back over to our lead person. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. That was lovely. And it's funny how with very small anecdotes, we get to learn so much. So thank you again. And we're going to have a lot more conversations. But today I'd like to now pass it over to Doug. So I think there's a lot of questions, a lot of queries and comments that he'd like all of us to engage with. Doug?
Well, we can start the Q&A, and I'm reminded of how Gloria was introduced, creme de la creme. And so, you know, there's an international phrase, right, that I think is obvious to everybody, but she is the cream of the cream, the best of the best. And I thought it was also interesting, another word that was used earlier, I think by Tisha, she talked about Americans as hustlers and bustlers, or doers and bustlers. So the word bustler is a little bit unusual for Americans. So I had to look that one up, and the definition of bustler is interesting because it says who bustles, a hustler. And so if we didn't know better and what her intent was, we could look in the dictionary, and there are 4 definitions of hustler. Not only one of them is positive. So the positive one is an athlete who plays with energy and aggressiveness. So a hustler, I'm able to do it. But all examples are bad. One is one obtains money or deceit. So what made me think of this is that those who are not as experienced in international business might take what was said and say, oh, okay, and then go back and like try to figure out what was actually said. And certainly what was not being said was Americans are those who obtain money by fraud and deceit. I'm 100% sure of that. But those are the cross-cultural nuances and changes and issues that we deal with. And it does require patience. And I love what Gloria talked about in terms of the speaking cadence. Because we want to try to get everything out very often, right? Fill the space, but hey, I've got so much to say, I've got to say it all. And so Gloria, really thank you for that, because I really want to work on that. And I know my mentor, my grandfather, one of the things that made him so impressive to me was he was someone who spoke that way. He would speak, there'd be a pause, and the drama of that. I mean, he spoke English with a German accent, but the drama of that brings you in, right? It's great for storytelling, you know, and also for people to listen and to be proactive in setting the tone, because you want people to listen to you, and vice versa. You get into that cadence too of then waiting and listening to the other person to completely finish, and so, which is another characteristic, not just in Japan, Gloria, but elsewhere. So thank you for all of you for commenting today. Really thought there was a lot to take away. We have a few minutes, Maimun. What questions do you have for the group?
I think there's a lot, because there was so much engaging content. I'll actually go into a few of the ones that some of the people have already asked in the Q&A. So I think this one would be directed to Tisha. Is developing on her idea of, you see, when we have the problem with time zones, right? So what is the best way to adapt to these time zones? If you want to, work with people of different culture or from different countries. Tisha, what would be your suggestion on this?
So as of IT industry, I can speak from them. So what happens whenever you're having a significant time difference? So people actually find out what is the overlapping time they can connect with each other. Because other than that, suppose you need at least 2 to 4 hours of overlapping time every day to distribute the work that you have. Suppose you're doing a particular project which requires a certain amount of development as well as project management. So you don't need actually the whole day for a project management meeting. So you can take the overlaying time for that and overlapping time for that, and the rest of the time the developers will do their own work within their time zones. It's absolutely flexible in that manner. So yeah, that is how actually companies who have cross-cultural business are working, as of my experience, the way I have seen it. So sometimes it can happen that you are pushing your time, you are doing meeting late night, but the overlapping time is the most time you can utilize the best. But yeah, thank you. That was the experience that I could share.
Great, thanks so much. I think we have a question for Cole over here. It's a bit, I think, different. It's a bit specialized from our core question of today, but it is that when you had the journey in the Eastern countries, did you notice any difference between the startup culture in Western and Eastern cities?
Hey, yeah, thanks for your question. That's a very interesting question. And don't have much experience working in startup cultures, and I didn't quite experience the startup cultures in the East and Eastern countries and in developing countries too. But what I can share is a brief overview about the startup culture that I've experienced. And I think I might be generalizing, but I feel as if the Western culture is in America, at least, is quick to jump toward, funding and, how do we get funding to support this project? And I think a lot of times when you're trying to build out an idea, it really starts in just volunteering but I'm not quite sure. I'll have to think about that one more. So you've piqued my interest.
All right, thank you. I think we've got another question from Nate Lamar, and I think this would be ideal for Gloria to answer. He asks, what do you think, or would you comment on the importance of learning other languages in order to conduct international business, from the context that many Americans lack this knowledge of other languages?
I think the most important thing you can do is, first of all, identify the country with whom you're going to be doing business. It's literally impossible to learn every language in a quick read, if you will, and get the greetings down. Hello, goodbye, just your basic greetings, directions, just basic languages or sentences that you need to know how to use. Which way to the restaurant, or hello, goodbye, thank you. Just your basic greetings in that language. Get those down first. And you have a great resource, and it's your consulates. Check with your consulates in your cities, in your respective communities or cities, and use them, because when I was in Chicago, I can't tell you, I learned more from going to my consulates, making an appointment, and telling them what I needed to know about a certain country. And a lot of times sometimes it was a language, how to say hello, how to say goodbye, how to say thank you, where's the restroom, things like that. And when the best time, they told me in Chicago when I was there, because right now I'd have to go to LA for the consulates. There aren't that many here in Phoenix. But like 2 and 4, after they're done with their visas, like middle of the afternoon is when they're more willing to sit down with you and they've got the time. But learn from your consulates. You have universities around you. Learn from the students. Post something at a university that you're looking for a student, a native-born student from such and such a country, and you want to learn from them and find out from them what's important for them to know. Just some basic language skills. And certainly everyone else chime in if you have another opinion or a point on that.
Perfect. I'd just like drive in. Yeah.
So I can share another experience. Like suppose we have partners in Japan. So what I think that they understand English very well, but sometimes they are not interested to speak in English. So we have an interpreter who are actually helping to translate whenever we're doing any business deals. So language, I think Gloria is absolutely on point. We have to at least understand how to address or how to say hello, good morning, and ask a few questions in that language is very important. Then again, it's absolutely a personal choice that people has, or businesses happen around the globe. So we can always take the help from an interpreter or an organization who can help us with that. So yeah, I think that is another way to go, right, Gloria? What do you think? Yeah.
Sounds good. I just wanted to make a point that we are going till quarter after, I believe. So we normally run Globinars for an hour. So just so everybody knows, we are going to hang on for another 10 to 15 more minutes. So there's more time for Q&A. And I also wanted to point out, if you haven't already, check out the chat area and look at some of the books and resources that people are recommending. People like Lani and Catherine and Brenda, these are experts in cross-cultural experience, cross-border and also cross-functional leadership. And so the resources that they're mentioning there are spectacular, and definitely worth a read. My mind-opening experience was the book Riding the Waves of Culture by Fons Trompenaars. For some reason, there's a lot of Dutch people who have written around the cross-cultural and different cultural issues. And what's cool about it is and I put the link in there in Wikipedia, it talks about cultures, as was discussed today, in one level, but there are many, many different levels of ways of measuring cultures. And understanding that, for me, has been absolutely critical. I don't think I could have lasted as long as I've had without understanding some of the fundamental differences, like was mentioned earlier about, the relationship versus kind of rules-based, which, is a little bit different than was described, but kind of the Swiss mind of, if your brother-in-law is a tax cheat and you find out about it, if you're Swiss, you're more likely to report your brother-in-law. But if you're Malaysian, likely you won't, because the relation part of the Malaysian culture would never allow that to happen, or very rarely. So it opens up the door of, well, what's ethical and what's not. And I loved what Tisha mentioned earlier about no right or wrong. I prefer to look at it as, well, there's no right or wrong. It's just they've raised a certain way and they have a different culture, and that's just kind of the way it is. So I do want to just point out, Maimun, and turn it back to you, that the resources that they're putting in the chat area are amazing and definitely worth checking out.
Can I just inject something kind of fun? Everybody want something fun from the animal kingdom?
Lion King, is this what you're talking about?
I wrote down something here. If there's time, I'm going to share something on protocol from the animal kingdom. Okay,
Sure.
Ready? Okay, here we go. Crows will line up on a pole with the most senior crow to the youngest crow, hence the reference to pecking order. Monkeys gather around their leader or most senior monkey to keep warm and protected. They value wisdom. Geese fly in formation and continually reorganize to make sure the lead goose is strong. This is called true team effort. How's that? That's how our society should move.
Very profound.
Wonderfully written.
Comes back to the idea of biomimicry.
I think we're learning a whole lot more being panelists, along with everybody else who's being part of today's session. It's amazing. I was just checking out the book list. It really is extensive, and I would really like to read up on this. Something for, I think, the winter holidays. It's a good read up. I think we have a few more questions. One for Raihan. This would be from the perspective of legal. I know we touched on it. We're all doing business, and maybe Gloria can even give us an idea on this. Does the culture we come from, we frequently use the word lost in translation, right? Does the culture we come from affect the way we interpret any document, a legal document, per se, in an instance?
Oh, I am going to pass that baton over to Tisha, if you can answer that. I'm not quite sure. I have to think that one through first, but I think you can be right on with it right now.
So what was the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't get that.
The question would be to, I guess, both you and as well as Raihan, that if there is a legal document, say between the US and between Bangladesh, or between Japan or the EU, how would we interpret it? When we go into a country to do business, does our cultural background also kind of define the way that, how we perceive certain terms differently, certain actions differently?
Okay. So to answer to that question, suppose you are talking about some legal papers like NDA could be one of them, partnership contract could be one of them. How do you want to get the partnership benefits among your, allies. That can be one of the other contracts. Some businesses, they actually sort of go around with trust factor rather than so many documentation or legal works. So it can happen sometimes that the company you are partnering up with doesn't need any contract to sign for. You can go ahead just based with your trust factor over the years, right? And sometimes few companies, especially the enterprises, they prefer very formal legal documentation. And for that, every country and every culture, I would say, has a different sort of idea or templates for all those documentation. I have seen contracts from Germany can take pages after pages, and then again some other country might have fewer terms and condition in the partnership document. So it can actually vary. It actually varies from culture to culture, and according to every country's policy, the terms and condition sort of reflects to within that contract. So it's based on the based on two parties, how they want to do the collaboration and do the mutual agreement. But then again, the laws and policies must be obey with for both of the party from different regions and different country. So yeah, that's how it's working. Yeah.
If I can add in a bit into that, and this is coming from a person who's married to a lawyer. Lawyers tend to be in a kind of a circle of their own, which has their own culture of making things difficult to understand. So when you're reading a law book as a layman, you're going to find out that a lot of things are written in a way, in a lengthy way that you cannot understand. But whenever you're talking legal, it's always good when you're going cross-border to employ a lawyer in the specific country that you're going to, so that they do the understanding for you and then they interpret for you. So, even if there are gray areas for the parts that you don't understand, involve your company lawyer with the local lawyer in that country, but it'll certainly make things easier for you.
Yeah, that's the key, Maimun, is law is not culture. How you react to the law might have cultural aspects, but be aware of what the law is in the countries that you're working in. And to Raihan's point, make sure that your lawyer, wherever they are, is connected to a lawyer on the ground there that can help them with the law and deal with it that way. So just remember, to follow the law everywhere, above and beyond the cultural aspects.
Right. Perfect. I think one aspect that we sometimes have miscommunications in, and this is a very open question to whoever would like to take it, is how we perceive verbal and physical communication. I know in certain parts of the world, we take certain things to be very touchy. I mean, if we have to use the word, but in other instances, we don't like, even giving a handshake. So Gloria, Cole, if you can share your experiences.
There's a lot of great books out there. I think Roger Axtell wrote the first ones, and just how to understand languages and gestures around the country. Certainly a gesture that we have, which is the A-OK sign, is okay here because it means right on. In another culture could be very offensive. So just the way we use our hands, how we communicate with our hands, it's a good idea to read up on that culture to find out what gestures are offensive to them, but not offensive to you. And find the middle ground there and try not to use that gesture out of respect for their comfort level with you. Just because it's okay in your country does not mean they're supposed to just adapt. I think that's a mindset out there, unfortunately, because I'm American, you just adapt to me because we're king. That goes back to a book written way back when called The Ugly American. And hopefully with efforts like what Doug is doing with the Global Chamber and everything, we're getting beyond that image. And I use that word fusion. We're becoming a little bit more culturally fused, or infusion, cultural infusion. Said that awkwardly, but I think you know what I meant. That's happening. And books today are starting to be written more in that language, in that term. I think above all, I think if the parting word for me would be just realize that knowledge is gained through understanding how a country evolved and how it works. I made the reference to the 1970s in this country and the riots and the changes that we went through, and as to how the glass ceiling, if you will, what women went through in this country, that's called change. And just understanding other countries, understanding what we went through from that period on, and why we women are the way we are, and why we have a very non-gender attitude towards things, would be helpful to other countries to know us. And certainly other countries starting to take on that model, but we don't know which ones necessarily. Usually the larger metropolitan areas are a little bit more sensitive to it. But just understanding how and Doug, I think, said something earlier to that extent, just understanding how a country evolved. When you did all your examples, you were really on that page.
You can use that for your advantage. And so one example I use is when we moved to Singapore, the Singaporeans tend to be very rule-based and Malaysians less so. And so I was informed by my daughter that some videos she had packed were in the shipment, and that was illegal for Singapore to not disclose those videos. And so while they were unpacking the boxes, I became friends, quote unquote, with the Malaysian inspector, and I developed a relationship in the hours leading up to his discovery of the box that said videos on it. And by then he actually opened the box. So my heart kind of like, uh-oh, he opened the box, because there's prison, supposedly in store for people who do this, which is probably overstatement, but that's the law. He opened the box, he looked inside, he made a little note, and he said, okay, and he closed the box, and off we went. So I always attributed my immature understanding of culture to getting away with sending in videos into Singapore because of knowing a little bit of that. And those kinds of things come into play for all of us as we do business around the world. Maimun, I'm sure you've had many cases where your knowledge, and as you grow more and more, your knowledge of these cultural little nuances can really play out on the business side of things. Oh, Maimun, are you there? You might be muted.
Sounds like a bandwidth.
He's doing the
Okay. I don't see Maimun. Oh, okay. So I think we're actually, he did leave the room, and so hopefully when it is time to close down, it's 1/4 after. Does anybody have any final comments that they'd like to make on the program, things that maybe were left out?
I have one thing that I have been waiting to say, is that over the last 4 years, through you, Doug, and Global Chamber, I've come to know a lot about people from different cultures within and outside the US. And personally, I really appreciate it, and I applaud your efforts for it. So I don't know, I would just like to invite every participant over here today to just give a little bit of applause for Doug and Cesar and everyone at the Global Chamber, please.
It reverberates around the
Thanks
world.
We're all
global survivors, and we all understand the value of understanding and respect, and understanding leads to respect from my own experience. So thank you, Raihan. Does anybody else have any final comments? I finally understand to call Tisha instead of Farzana. So that I did not know about that. I knew Korean and Japanese and Chinese, but I didn't know Malaysian. So sorry, I've been calling you Farzana all this time, which I think must be your family name, Tisha.
Yeah, that's basically the first name, but I'm being called by my last name, so this is an interesting thing. So that's me with my
which happens in other places, but usually, like in the English, if they call you Brunky, like in my case, it's not necessarily very respectful, right? So,
well,
Farzana, I thought it was the other way. So first name is Farzana. My apology.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, no, I hadn't gotten it either this long, so I get it. Maimun is back. Maimun, I think we're wrapped up. And so would you like to make some final comments, or whatever you'd like to do, finish the Globinar, please?
Yes, I think today we embodied a great part what the Global Chamber itself stands for, diversity, multicultural activities, and that we're open to everybody. And we're one step closer to understanding. We're happy to organize this webinar with all of our collaborators, including ICE Business Times, who's been our media partner. And thank you very much to all of our panelists today. And of course to you, Doug, and for always supporting us at HQ, and Cesar as well. And we hopefully will be back again with another webinar pretty soon from Global Chamber Dhaka and Barcelona. And that's all from us here now. Be global and unstoppable.
Thanks, everybody. Good evening in Asia. Have a great day. The rest of the world.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for-
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.